Hi, I'm Victoria Whitley. I'm a paediatric staff nurse, been trained for 22 years, and I currently work in Plymouth Recovery Children's Theatres. I was currently working on Woodcote ward at the time, on level 12 acute wards, and was unwell. To cut a long story short, I got rushed in on Christmas Day 2015 with a temperature of 41.5, very poorly. When they were in there, they'd swabbed me, and I actually was positive for influenza A and RSV pneumonia. That quickly led to full septic shock and then multi-organ failure, and I was intubated, paralysed and ventilated on ICU, and was critical for a long time. My family were called down on the Boxing Day to say their goodbyes. So whilst I was there, obviously I was intubated for 12 days and had dialysis because I was so acidic. None of the doctors or nurses thought I'd probably make it. So like I said, my family were called in to say goodbye. I'd left my 4-year-old daughter at the time on the Christmas Eve, and I was meant to go and pick her up from her dad on the Christmas Day. So that makes it all a bit more harder to kind of deal with as well. After the 12 days of kind of fighting for my life and everything, I had bilateral total occlusion blood clots in both jugulars, as well as multi-organ failure. So they tried to extubate me after 12 days, and that failed. So I had to have a tracheostomy to come off the ventilator. So even when I came off and was awake, I couldn't move or talk or do anything. And then, so after my recovery, I needed to learn how to walk, to talk, and to kind of build myself back up again. The two things that really stick out from my time in ICU, which I can remember when I was awake, was the feeling of apple juice on a mouth swab, just a couple of drops of that onto my tongue. The flavour of that was absolutely phenomenal, and I'll never forget that at all, from obviously being NG fed and literally just kind of mouth care. That was, I can't even explain how amazing that was. And the other thing was when I was able to go into a chair and to go and have a shower, like in the chair with my mum, just that feeling of warm water on my skin was completely amazing. It was just total TLC after all painful and horrible procedures that you go through in ICU. It's not a nice experience at all. So you just appreciate the little things so much more, and yeah, like I said, those two things will always remain with me. I'd dealt with PTSD after being in ICU, and I'd had some therapy done with the psychologist Rachel Clark here, which did help a lot, because originally I didn't think I'd ever even get back to work at all. And Plymouth Recovery have kind of helped build me back up and be my rehabilitation to get back to being Vic, really, has helped me to get this far. So at that time I just wanted to put my nurse hat on, but also just to kind of push myself as well, and just to see, for me, for my personal journey, like I said, what I could deal with and what I could kind of take from it, but also obviously giving that care to the patients and having that understanding of being a patient myself, which is what I brought to the table, which maybe other people couldn't. And just give TLC. Obviously the intensive care nurses were overseeing all our care that we did. We were buddied up with a nurse, but just hand holding, stroking heads, I wanted to make sure that the patients knew that they were safe, which was a big thing for me when I was in ICU. Because I remember hearing that, because even if you're not really fully conscious, you can still hear a lot of the time, depending on sedation. So I just wanted to make sure that they knew that they were safe and where they were, and that we were trying to do everything that we could. And at one time I saw a patient with tracheostomy as well, and I really wanted to just make it known. I wanted him to say, you've joined my club, I had a tracheostomy, I was where you were, and it will be okay, it will be removed, and I'm back here looking after you now. So it's just those bits which gives them that bit of motivation to help and know that actually they can do it and can get better. One of my times I was in the green area of ICU, so I helped a lady be extubated, which I wasn't sure how I'd feel about that at the time. But again, I just wanted to, because I knew that she'd be able to hear first and foremost, so I wanted to make sure that she knew she was safe when she came out from the ventilation, that she knew where she was, what had happened, and that she was just waking up and that it was all okay. So afterwards, just to kind of give that personal touch, because especially with ladies with long hair, obviously it's not a priority when you're being intubated about your hair, but it does end up being a bit of a bird's nest, not at the back. So I just wanted to do my bit to help comb her hair. So I thought it was quite short, but it took me 2 hours to comb out her hair, which was down to about here, and then kind of moisturised her and just creamed all over her, hands massaged and things, because it was those things that I found, like the little things are the big things, definitely. So it's just a bit of TLC, and I think obviously the medical intervention and everything else that we do in the medication is obviously the ultimate to help bring back, but I think it's those things that I remembered the most. I think that was probably one of the hardest things to kind of deal with, to actually see what the families would have had to have seen, because obviously my parents were allowed in then, obviously due to COVID. Unfortunately, they weren't allowed in unless it was literally like end of life, which I can't even imagine how hard that was. But yeah, it definitely triggered back to thinking of my parents seeing their child lying there and obviously getting called in to come and say goodbye. My dad on the Boxing Day, I believe, went home waiting for the phone call and literally didn't even take his shoes off. He literally sat in the lounge with his shoes on just waiting, and that absolutely broke me really, just hearing about that, because obviously at that time I didn't know what was going on, so my family were the ones that had to deal with all that heartbreak and shock, real shock, because I was so fit and well. And I think that was one of the main things. It's like someone that can be so fit and healthy can suddenly get to that point so quickly and end up having to say goodbye to them. Yeah. So, and every day I was critical, so at every point they didn't know whether they were going to lose me. So, and also thinking of my daughter at the time, who obviously I missed Christmas, missed her 5th birthday, couldn't speak to, and obviously children weren't allowed into the intensive care unit, and she wouldn't have wanted to see me like that anyway. So she was just told that I was Sleeping Beauty. And then when I had my tracheostomy afterwards, she was told I was like Ariel. And we did have a patient that on just before I was leaving, we were going to be having to call the family in to say goodbye, and that I felt that a lot. I kind of went out and just could imagine them kind of coming in and thinking, oh, it's really cold, and just imagining that panic and how they felt to come in to say goodbye. And yeah, that was hard, because I just thought, why am I here and they're not going to be. Yeah. The team that I went with from my own area, from Plymouth Recovery, were absolutely amazing, and they made sure that all their buddies that they were with knew my story, so that they came and talked to me and said if at any point I had any triggers or just wanted to leave or just go or couldn't manage it, that was absolutely fine. They were all absolutely amazing, and I think they were all a bit amazed that I was there. Really, I think they thought I was mad that I volunteered myself, though I didn't have to. But yeah, the support was amazing from, like I say, my own team and from ICU was really good. And like, it did trigger me a lot with lots of things, but again, I knew I was safe and I knew I wasn't the patient, and I was there to do my bit and help others. So if I can go through all that and take that positivity out of it, then it's one reason to be worthy of coming back for. It almost feels completely surreal. I know obviously that it all happened to me, but at the same time it feels like it didn't, because you suffer from delirium quite a lot as well, so you kind of have to get your mind around what was actually reality and what was delirium, which was quite hard for quite a while. For anyone that's got over it and gone through similar experiences to me, total respect to them, because I know how hard it is, like completely, and they're all, you know, everyone that comes out of ICU, ventilated, not ventilated, is a worrier in my eyes. So I'm just really, really glad that I kind of like put my nurse's hat on a bit more and like kind of went away from it being about me and it being about other people, and bringing my experiences round to help and aid other people rather than just dwelling on myself being the victim. Just wanted to kind of like do my bit, because like I said, then the little things are the big things, and hopefully even if one person benefits from it, then it's worth it. And I'm really pleased that I did it, and I would go and do it all over again.